Mick Gordon's Doom soundtracks have solidified themselves as some of the best metal soundtracks of the last decade. Unfortunately, emulating his sound is harder than it appears on the surface. His approach to writing metal is completely different from anyone else, incorporating distorted synths, heavy guitars, and massive percussion stacks. So today I'm going to show you guys the ideas and principles you can use to make your own Mick Gordon style metal track. So let's start with the drums. Today we're using Modern and Massive 2, and we're using the New Vibes preset because we wanted that slam feel, and we programmed everything at around 120 to 127 velocity because we don't want these to be particularly human. We want them to feel as robotic as possible. These drums are programmed with the intention of being intense and in your face. So to beef up these drums, we added some additional percussion layers as well. So when adding percussion stacks to your drums, it's good to look for something that may fill out more of the 16th note and faster rhythm space. So this one loop in particular has some snare fill stuff going on, and it has hi-hat and rhythmic stuff that helps support the drum part. So let's listen to that by itself. So it's almost giving this turntable kind of a vibe, but it really blends well with the drum part. All right, so moving on to guitars and bass for this track. We're in the key of F, and I know that Meshuggah generally is in F standard, I believe F1. And since Mick Gordon is inspired heavily by Meshuggah, we chose to just go with this F tuning. So we use the Fortin Nameless plugin because it is modeled after Meshuggah's signature amp. So here's what the main guitars sound like in solo. Also note, this amp is pretty aggressive and the top end does spike a good bit. So we did do some EQing to try to dull down that top end hiss a little bit. So let's listen to these guitars before and after the EQ. So these EQ moves do look pretty aggressive, but with all the other elements that are stacked on top of the guitar or considered, we're really just carving space for some of the synth elements that are going to be added on top of these guitars as a layer. And we also incorporated some sludge layers, and I just call them sludge layers because they're an octave below what's already been pitched down. So yeah, the sludge guitars by themselves do sound kind of muddy, but whenever you mix them into the regular guitar and the bass tracks, it creates a wall of sound. So our bass is in the same octave as the guitar, kind of like the way Meshuggah does it. We actually put Eurobass's DI into our fuzz pedal. There's nothing crazy going on here. I think I added a little more distortion, and then I printed it down. That fuzz pedal has a lot of roll off with the distortion, so let's listen to that really quick. So there's a little bit of flubbiness with that fuzz pedal activated, so I actually just went ahead and printed it all down. We're being pretty surgical on our edits here, so we did edit out some of that like flubby distortion noise that was happening from the print. We really want that staccato feel, and we want things to duck in and out in a pleasant way. So we're editing this pretty aggressively. So, in addition to our bass and guitars, we also added some distorted synth bass as well, just to create that wall a little more. And let's go ahead and listen to that. So now that we have all these layers, let's listen to all of this together. So let's talk about volume automation and filter sweeps. All right, so to add tension to the beginning of this song, I automated a filter sweep. We're just bringing in more intensity and introducing the next part. A way to do that is we drew in our automation here. So in Cubase, you're going to pull your automation finder down here. You're going to select more. You're going to go to Inserts. And then for this instance, I have Pro Q3. And each band that you select is going to go chronological. So I only have one band doing a high pass sweep. So I selected band 1 and I selected frequency. So once I chose that, I started at 100 to keep that rumble in there, but then it's slowly opening up into 30K. Let's hear that in the context of the song. One other thing I wanted to note is I did this really surgical and intentional volume automation adjustment. So this is hitting right before arguably the most intense part of the song. And I'm actually taking this synth bass and I'm pitching it up as well. So it normally would have been at like, B2, but I pitched it up 2 octaves and then volume automated it just to segue into the next part in a really weird way, because anything that's Doom inspired has that inherent sense of off-putting gross textures to it. So let's listen to that. And notice it's just one segment, but it really does a lot in terms of the full picture. All right, so let's move on to other synth elements and post-production. And this synth is from the Industrial Metal Serum Pack, and it's basically just a pulsing synth. It's just doing that 16th note pulse that I want it to do, and it's blending well with all the percussion elements. So now let's talk about this synth lead. There is some volume automation on it, and I did put a micro shift on it as well. And there is some pitch stuff going on. So I do have little altar boy pitched 12 semitones up, and there's a little drive on it. And I also am panning it. So it adds a little more depth to the riff itself and adds this counter melody that blends nicely with it. So now let's move on to impacts, which arguably is one of the most important factors of this production. These impacts are pretty intense because we are writing a song that's in that style of futuristic metal, almost has that post-apocalyptic vibe to it. I'm going to solo, so I've actually got 2 stacked impacts on here, and I've also blended and reversed them as well. So let's hear this infected impact. And this impact is actually in the Metal Essentials Volume 2 pack as well. So let's hear that. And I stacked another impact on top of this one. And I was really intentional on how I wanted to incorporate this impact. So a lot of times when you have impacts and you want a good swell to pair with it, I usually just reverse it and blend it into the initial spike of the impact. All right, so I'm in the Metal Essentials Post Production Volume 2 pack. So I'm going to bring in this clap slice impact, and I'm going to bring it to the section that I want it to hit. So it's definitely on the grid there. A common practice that I do is I'm going to actually take this, duplicate it, and it's not quite meeting that next transient. I'm going to cut it off anyways and grid it. So now we are perfectly quantized in, and I'm actually going to reverse it. But I don't want it to be at the top spike of where the impact hits. So I'm actually going to cut that off. I'm going to drag that in. And it's another common practice to fade it in as well. So let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, reversing your samples is a really good approach to make everything feel unified. And I strongly encourage you guys to take any samples and modulate them in any way possible to serve your song. Wanted to point out too that we're using this siren riser to go into these impacts, and it's from the Cult Essentials pack. So this particular riser is in Dead March, and it's this stem called Siren Riser. Pretty much explains itself. And here are all the post-production elements together. And this is what our final track sounds like. That's it for today's video. If you guys want more post-production tips, be sure to check out this video here. Thanks for watching. Leave us a like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week.